It has been a very tough few days for Bitcoin, which has fallen over 30% from its all-time high. And the question that everybody's probably asking is, are we in a bear market, or was this the bottom and are we about to see a new all-time high? Let's go and see this together. In my last video, I was talking about a potential long trade between 93,000 and 91,000. However, I did say that if we were to flip this into resistance, we could have seen a move down all the way down to $80,000. And that is exactly what happened. We went down to 96,000. We had no reaction. As you can see, we flipped this into resistance and we proceeded for a bigger fall. Once again, at 91,000, we found some support initially, and then we lose the support and we moved down all the way down to $80,000, just like I was expecting. But have we finally found the bottom at $80,500? Is it all up from here? Well, personally, I don't think so. I don't think the low is in. I do think that we will see a new low. And why is this? First of all, statistically, we don't typically see major lows being put in on a Friday. We typically see that on a Monday or Tuesday. Second of all, the TPO does look good. We do have some excess right here, which is typically a good sign for a low. However, what I do not like is that this low was printed on electronic trading hours. You typically want to see the low being put in on regular trading hours. So it should have looked something like this. So that's the second reason why I don't think statistically that we have put in the low. Of course, anything is possible in trading, and we could have actually put in the bottom. What else? Bitcoin has been completely weak. As you can see, a low, a high, a lower low, a lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. Even if we do push here, what stops us from putting a new lower high and proceeding for a lower low, just like we have this whole way down? And lastly, we did put the low in at $80,500. Typically, these big round numbers, such as 80,000, they tend to be taken out. Once again, these are just statistics. They don't have to be, but typically they get taken out, which makes me think that eventually we will go and make a lower low from where we're trading now. Therefore, there are certain areas in the chart where I will be looking for short trades. And don't get me wrong, I do expect price to keep raising a bit higher from here due to a short squeeze, but eventually I do expect for a lower high to be put in and for a bigger drop. And therefore, we need to find the resistance where we can get into a short to then make money off of a bigger drop. But do stick around because I will also cover 2 long trades that we can potentially take. So let's start with our short trades. There are 3 points of interest that I have for this. The first one is actually right here, where we have ran into this anchor VWAP. We have a naked point of control just above us and the value area high of this previous range, which at the moment seems to be holding quite well. However, I don't think this will hold, and I think we can see higher prices, because if we go on our order flow, we can see bullish divergences, which are a sign of absorption and a lot of short squeezing. Obviously, this is due to the fact that a lot of people were very late at shorting the drop. So for example, here we saw over 67 million shorts opening at the lows at 80,000. And then we saw another 32 million shorts opening right at the bottom, which then started a big rally to the upside, which is mainly fueled by a short squeeze, which means that the shorts are losing money and they have to close their position with a long position. So I don't think this is a likely place for reversal. However, if we do reject here doing something like this, I completely understand why. But for me, the 2 biggest points of interest are coming off of this big volume range profile that we have from this previous range. Specifically, this value area low right here at 91,000 and this point of control at 96,000. And if you want to understand how these tools work, I do have a mentorship where I teach all of this. So if you're interested in that, you can join the Discord with the link in the description and you can contact me on Discord. But as I was saying, I do expect for price to possibly move all the way up to this 91,000 target, where, as I said, we do have this value area low from the bigger range, which is going to be very, very strong resistance. Additionally, if we take this volume range right here, it is also lining up with the point of control, and we do have the anchor VWAP from an important pivot point, which is starting to line up with it too. Therefore, I would not be surprised if we see something such as this to then move down more. And there, of course, you can get into a short trade This is based on a reaction. This is an indicative stop loss. What I want to see is for a wick to be put into place, see a rejection, and then I will adjust my stop loss based on that wick. However, if we are to flip this into support and we don't see a bearish reaction, but what we do is actually claim the level, then I would expect a move up all the way to 96,000, where we can look for our second potential short trade, where we can see another anchor view up coming slowly to line up with our level perhaps in the next week or so. And therefore, once again here, if we see a nice rejection of the level, we can get into a short trade to once again target the new lows. Of course, we are not going to blindly take these short trades. We will take them only if there is a bearish reaction. Therefore, if the price just comes up very strong and there is no reaction whatsoever and we just blast through these levels like this, then I will not be taking any short trades at all. And I will not be wasting my money on a trade that is likely to not work out. So for example, if we come up to this level and I don't see any trapped longs at the top, and I just see a lot of people shorting, retail traders shorting this level, most likely I'm not going to take this trade and I will just wait for higher prices. But the whole point is that until we reclaim 91,000 or 97,000, and this holds price either here like this or here like this, for me, the probability that a bottom is put in remain very low. Now, where does this change? Because of course we can't keep shorting a rally. At one point we have to change our bias. I would say that if we are able to move all the way up to 96,000 and hold this as support, then it is more likely that the bottom right here at 80,000 is now finished and we have seen an actual bottom, and we can expect price to move up to 116,000. And from there, of course, we have to see the reactions, but potentially we could flip this value area high into support to then move for a new all-time high. So yes, a new all-time high is on the table. I just don't think at the moment it is likely. But as I said before, anything is possible. We just have to look at probabilities. And for now, since we're still at 86,000, the probabilities for this to happen is very, very low. But if we slowly start to reclaim levels such as 91,000, 96,000, or for example, even 100,000, that's also a very, very important level, which I will talk about in a second, then the probabilities, of course, increase for a bigger move to the upside and a potential all-time high. But as I said, for now, highest probability is that we squeeze and eventually get a bigger drop. Also, keep in mind a potential scenario where price moves up all the way to 100,000, takes out the 100,000 psychological level. A lot of people are going to get bullish. I can already see this happening. A lot of people are going to start longing because they're like, oh, we're back above 100,000. And that's where perhaps we can see a reversal. So keep that in mind as well. Now, if we are to make new lows with such a movement, where is my next level of interest? First of all, of course, we always have to look at the previous lows. And we have these lows at 74,000 right here. Of course, we always have to check for a reaction such as an SFP, where we simply grab liquidity and reverse, or a failed auction where we move below the level, reclaim it, and then we have a long trade with the potential of a bigger reversal. And that would be something like this. But once again, this all depends on the reaction, because if price just keeps on coming down like this with no reaction, then we don't take the long trade. Now, if this level at 74,000 fails, the next interesting level for me will be at 67,000. Obviously, you have to give yourself some room. It can go from 67 to, up to 60,000, for example. But this is where I will be monitoring price action, looking what we're doing. And if we get a reclaim, for example, of the level, once again, I will have my long trade for a potential reversal. However, here I would say that the likelihood of going back to an all-time high is very, very low. Because at this point, we would have lost the bullish market structure that we've had with higher lows every single time. And for the first time on the weekly time frame, for example, or anyways on the higher time frame, we will have switched to a bearish market structure where we can look for a bounce and then a lower high for then a much bigger drop. So these are my bigger targets. However, I do understand that some of you are probably freaking out thinking, oh my God, we put in the low, and what if we did? So if we did, I would be looking for a long trade at about 84,000. I think this area is a good place to take a potential long. Also because we are going to see at midnight a gap open on the CME. Price is going to open around here, and sometimes these gaps do tend to get filled and then see a reversal. And in that case, that would line up pretty well with this point of control anchor VWAP from the low. And therefore we could see something like this to then go for example, my $91,000 target. And therefore we can look for a long trade such as this. Of course, we're not going to close our trade here. If we see strength and we keep seeing price moving up, we can trail this all the way up and we can end up with a very, very nice swing trade. So yeah, I think I covered everything. This is what I'm looking at. Remember to like and subscribe. And if you're interested in joining a free community with free signals, you can go ahead and join the Discord.